Hello. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, so I'm here and I decided now what I want to talk about. I remember what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about Michael Jackson. Okay, he's like my favorite legend, singer, dancer. His music has always been my favorite. Beat It and Billie Jean. And do you remember the time with the beautiful model Imani? So they did a documentary about Michael Jackson and about these young men. Well, now they're men, but these young boys that they were with Michael Jackson when he was in Neverland, and he. Well, anyway, they did a documentary about him. What do I think about the documentary? I think that it's all false. I don't think that Michael Jackson had even the opportunity to even be with so many, like so many kids. And there were a lot of security there. I wasn't there, but I could imagine Michael Jackson's life as always security guards and, you know, securing his home, securing his children, and even way before that, way before when he had his kids, like where would he find that time to do that? And why would these kids, first of all, when you have a trauma about being molested, I don't care if it's a man or a woman, you will actually have trauma. And you wouldn't be speaking so nicely about the person that molested your child. You wouldn't have fond memories of a molester or a pedophile. You wouldn't. Most people would be very much against of what I'm saying. But usually pedophiles, you know, uh, they, how would I say? They try to hide very well what they do. And so when you have a pedophile who, first of all, little kids, I can't see that Michael would have never, Michael Jackson would have never gotten caught. And why bring up the issue now after his death when he was actually acquitted and not found guilty, actually? And they waited all this time, and I have a problem with that. Even when other celebrities have been through some sort of rape or called out, fans calling out rape, is because I feel in my heart that they're trying to get publicity or trying to get money. I also can't see that, given the fact that if Michael paid off these families, how could you take that bribe knowing that your child was hurt by somebody who endangered their well-being and their well-being of their state of mind? And what parent lets their child go to Neverland or with Michael Jackson and sleep even in the same room, being that he is a man, a grown man sleeping with all these little kids? Now I have something here, and I do have a very great issue, and I don't know if people have brought this up, because I was Neverland always only about little boys sleeping in his home? Because I haven't heard not one little girl being mentioned here, and so he only was picking on little boys. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't see it. I didn't see it because I'm totally against of what they are saying. These kids, now that they have grown up and they're talking about it now, and then years before they're saying that Michael never did anything, all of a sudden now they're saying that, yeah, he did this and he did that. I have recollection of him doing this and doing that. Well, there has to be proof, not just because a child says it can necessarily be true. And also, a child can, how can I say it, can be talked to or into saying something that is not true, just because, it's more believable if it's coming out from a child than from an adult. Okay. And so, what my thing is that, okay, were little girls invited into Neverland? I mean, was it only little boys? I mean, I find that kind of strange. Wouldn't you find that kind of strange that is just little boys and not little girls? And so was it just, little boys that he was into? And only two boys, and here was Macaulay Culkin also, Alfonso Ribeiro was one of those little kids too, who really was a fan of Michael Jackson. I just can't see none of these kids coming out and saying, well, Michael Jackson did this to me and that to me, and they not once talking against Michael Jackson, and they also were with Michael Jackson, even did videos with him, and were with him all that time. And I can't see that, like I really have a problem with that. Like, were they, little girls there as well? And so I think that what I'm trying to say is that they want to ruin a man's reputation. They want to ruin his legacy. They want to ruin his what he has left behind, you know, and they want to make it out to be something horrible and disgusting, and they want to profit off of a man who who really didn't have a childhood. A lot of people say this. A lot of people say that this man didn't have a childhood, and I believe that. All his life, Michael Jackson, worked all his life. His father never gave him an opportunity to be a child, to never live a normal childhood. So, a lot of people say, well, maybe that's where he caught on to his tendencies. I don't see that. I don't see, all I see is a kind hearted, he almost had like a boyish innocence about him. I, I never saw him, I can't see Michael Jackson doing something so vile, and so and knowing that also, as that he wanted, and he also married Lisa Presley, and you know I just can't see, I just can't see him doing that. So a lot of people now have this idea in their minds, and once you say something, you can't turn back on what you have said. And so his whole legacy, his whole image is tarnished because of these two young boys. And a lot of people are against Michael Jackson. I haven't heard music from Michael Jackson. I haven't heard it. Not like before. And so it's really a shame that, these kids were brainwashed and I do believe that. I do believe that these kids were brainwashed, and they were they were told to say it because they needed money. They wanted money. They were greedy. And the greed is what led them to do what they did. Many people will probably have a very different opinion. Well, let me tell you, okay, probably had tendencies I don't know. I'm saying probably because I wasn't there. But the fact of the matter is that where would he have the time to do this? You know, this man was surrounded by a lot of people. Okay. Even, he was surrounded by a lot of people. Let's just put it like that. Another thing, I just can't see that, knowing that you have your children, your son or your daughter, and that you would let a grown man sleep in the very same room with your child is just so far off. To me, it's just so far off. And would I give permission? And this is what makes me so angry is that, you know, a lot of these parents that are agreeing and are supporting their child and saying, well, yes, you know, I left my child with Michael Jackson and you just took advantage of my child and he did this and he did that. But why did you leave your child with a man if you felt so strongly that 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 maybe perhaps that man could do something to your child and harm your child? Why would you even consider that or permit that? Was any document ever signed, and even if documents were signed, why would you leave your child? Like, is somebody, like I'm saying to myself, I'm trying to really understand, like trying to understand what is truth and what is not truth, and how would I react in a situation like that? Would I let my child, whether it be a boy or a girl, would I let my child sleep in a place that only a man is living? And of course, even if you have guards there, security guards, that, where would he find where would he find the time to even do that? If so many kids, so he was gonna. I just can't see that really. I just can't. I can't. And that he was only going to only choose those two kids to do that to when there were so many kids that were inside Neverland. Okay, and so one of the fans spoke up and said that he would show the parents around and that you know with their child, and he treated them very well, and that they never saw any awkwardness, any kind of any suspicious behavior regarding Michael Jackson. And so, yeah, like I really am disturbed about it because, like, what, he only had boys in his, and in his Neverland. Did he have just boys? Did he just invite boys? Were girls not in Neverland? I'm just saying, like, wouldn't you find that strange and weird that he would just invite boys and that he would just pick on those two specific kids just to do this to? And why have not other kids who have been there, I'm sure, have not come out and said, well, look, he also did this to me? And why didn't they say that before when he was alive and come out and say, well, look, this also happened to me, and what their statement is correct because it happened also to me. So all of a sudden now the man is dead and they want to destroy what legacy he he worked so hard for, you know, as growing up. Like they said, he never had a childhood, and so he wanted to enjoy his life and enjoy every bit of it, and I guess that Michael felt that it was a lost childhood, and he wanted to make up for it. I just can't see the man doing this and not ever, getting caught doing it. And so, yeah, like, this is a man who left a legacy, and he has his kids, At one point, his kids must have seen or, seen some kind of behavior that would make them have fear of their father, but not so. Like Paris Jackson, she's, she feels like she's against the wall because a lot of people have talked and so bad about her father, and like as she said, she's right. She doesn't need to defend her father. That's not her job to defend her dad, but it is her job to take care of herself and to take care of her sanity. And it must be really, really hard to know that all of this has come out and that she can't defend her dad, and that now all of that has been, ripped apart. Like that must be really, nerve wracking, and it must be something that she can't, can't speak up on because people are always judging and pointing fingers and, saying that her dad is this and that and he's that when they know nothing about the man. This is just a documentary based on two men who are now grown and have come out and said that Michael Jackson did this to them and that to them. And so I'm just curious, give me some enlightenment. Were there any girls? Were there any girls in Neverland? I didn't see the documentary. I actually have to, and I don't want to sit down and watch the documentary. I don't want to see it because I want to have that image of Michael Jackson as that innocent man who only wanted to have his childhood was taken away from him in the sense that he always had to work, and his father always put him to work, and that's how they became famous. And so he really didn't have a childhood, and I guess that he wanted to relive that. And so, yeah, I do believe that. I do believe that. And also the fact that, Oprah put him under the bus. I mean, knowing of how he was, I do believe that Michael Jackson was a very gentle soul. He was a very, I felt that in me, that he was a very gentle soul and just wanted to, have the world be a peaceful place, be a peace, have peace amongst the people, and he always spoke of that and how he felt, and you know, and at one point he looked so sad, and very pensive, and I just don't know. I just can't see him being that, and just people just tarnishing his legacy like as if nothing. He gave us his music, and he left behind something so that we can go back on. You know, that he had a weird way of acting, yes, and no one can take that away, but for good reason. I really believe that for good reason. I'm really a big fan of his, and though I'm really taken aback of a lot of the things that these two young men have said, regarding Michael Jackson and why they, are speaking up now, and all of a sudden now they have recollections of what happened. And so, no, like, I am not one of their supporters. I don't believe in the documentary that has spoken about Michael Jackson. And then maybe, yeah, spoken. I haven't seen it. So maybe someone here can enlighten me and, you know, um, give me some insight on what you think about the Michael Jackson documentary, if you agree on it. And were there any girls present at the time? Were there any young girls, like little girls? That's what I'm trying to say. And that if any little young girl has ever come out and said, Michael Jackson did this to me, Michael Jackson did that to me, and why those specific kids have come out, or those specific young men have come out and said that Michael Jackson did this and that. I've only seen them. I have not seen any others come out and said, well, he did this to me, he did that to me, he molested me or raped me or did this, and we slept in the room together, and it's like so far fetched of that, of knowing that you have your child, and it's like, okay, seven, like let's say if they're 12 years old, 13-year old, like that, 10-year olds, 9-year olds, you know how can you give permission for your child to stay in a home with a man if you felt so strongly right now about your kid being hurt? Why did you leave him alone? At what point did you leave your child alone with this man, and why did you? you know like I find stuff like that, like, really hard to believe. Like, would I leave my child who's 8, 9, 10, 12, 13-year old? No, I wouldn't. I mean, even if they begged me to, I wouldn't do it. You know, it's very, very difficult for me to even swallow that. And yet, you know, like all the comments that I have seen, that you know the fathers, the parents talk very fondly of Michael Jackson and how sweet he was, and that they can't believe that he could have done this to their child. Let me tell you, if I knew just a bit that my child was being harmed by a man, I wouldn't wait 20 years, or I wouldn't wait even 5. I wouldn't wait 2 years to speak up. I wouldn't, no matter for an amount of money to shut my mouth. I wouldn't shut my mouth, because that's part of me. That's my life. That's my child. You're hurting my child. So you're going to take money over the life of your child, over your child's mental state, and over your child's mental or well-being. You're going to take money, and you're going to take greed over your child's well-being. you know uh, you're going to let somebody bribe you. What can you know like, I can't see myself doing that. Like, really, like, no amount of money can make me shut up about someone who has harmed my child physically and mentally. No amount of fame that that person has can make me shut up about you harming my child. And then the way they spoke about Michael Jackson, even though I didn't see it, but my friends have said that they have seen it, and a lot of commenters have said that the families of these two kids, talk so fondly about a man who molested their kids, okay, who raped their kids, whatever you want to call it, harmed their kids. So how can you speak fondly of somebody who did damage to your own child? You know? And at what point did you leave your child with this man in a room? It's hard for me to believe that. So, yeah, even though this video really doesn't touch really on really deeper issues, like, he was acquitted, and how can they have not found any other kids, to verify the statement that these two young men have made? Okay, because actually, even Aaron Carter came out and saying that if he can kick that guy's, I forgot his name, but even if he can kick his ass, he would. And these are kids that were with Michael Jackson, okay, and they're now famous kids. I highly doubt. Also, I know what you're thinking. I highly doubt that these families were bought and say, well, if you keep your mouth shut, your kid might become famous or whatnot. Even though he was a legend, eventually he would have been found out, because eventually somebody would have said something. But even three guards spoke fondly of Michael Jackson. So I can't see that. And I saw this interview, by the way, the three security guards that were there. So that interview I did see, and they were speaking very fondly of Michael Jackson and the kind of person that he was, and how, how it's hard for them to believe that at what point did this happen. So yeah, I kind of like I feel for Michael Jackson. I feel for his, for his children. I feel you know their their hurt, that fans who come in, uh, who have come into his home, can now say such horrible things about him, and I've always been like a real huge fan of Michael Jackson, and I always will be a fan of Michael Jackson. I will love his music. I always will, even though people at this point right now may not agree with what I am saying. And they may think, like, this guy is a POS, and I don't think so. I think that, these kids, they were speaking because, you know, uh, out of greed, and they wanted fame, and they wanted, their 5 minute fame. And so by doing so, they came out with this documentary, and they decided, well, we're going to speak on what happened and what not, and what probably didn't happen, and we're going to destroy his image. Because I really do think that that's what it is. They're trying to destroy his legacy. And so, yeah, that's what I think of Michael Jackson. That's what I think that really, I want somebody to actually comment on this video and actually tell me, like, were there any girls ever in Neverland? And, were there little girls, because, supposedly this is was for children, to see, and he always invited the parents with the kids. It wasn't like the kids were alone. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to invite your kid, but you can't come to Neverland. And that's what I find so weird. Like, okay, like, you're not going to let a man sleep with your kid in a room and you sleep in another room. I don't think that ever happened. I highly, highly doubt that. I really, really highly doubt it. But I would like people's opinion about it. I would really like people to comment on this video if they can, because it's really hard for me to really swallow that. And, maybe what I'm saying is incorrect, because since I didn't see the video, I really think that the video is just for to get, more money and fame, and to really make Michael Jackson really look like he's, like, in a bad light. And so, what better way of doing it than to make a documentary and create lies? And so, I really do think that they created lies based on what these two gentlemen, if we can even say that they're gentlemen, because to create and fabricate such a big lie, it's very, very disturbing to me that, you went through this, and yet, you're able to sit in front of millions of people and actually destroy someone's legacy, and even their families. Like, they didn't really were sensitive enough to realize that he has children. He has his children, and that they were going to see this, and it must be really heartbreaking to hear and not be able to defend their father, in the way that they wanted. And so, yeah, I feel for them. I feel for his kids. I feel for Michael Jackson's kids, and that's all I have to say about it. But I would like you to hear about your opinion, and how, and how you feel about the documentary. Did you see the documentary? What is your opinion about the documentary, and how did you feel you know, uh, about how they carried out the documentary? And it would be very interesting in what people have to say, and your opinions, because actually I wanted to talk about it because you know maybe someone could shed light to what I to what I want to know, you know, and how did actually this Neverland really worked out, like how was it that these kids got invited, since I didn't see myself the video. So it would be very interesting to see the opinions and the comments of others and what they think about the documentary. And if you even saw the documentary, how did you feel about it? So, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. I am very grateful that everyone, whoever tuned in, I'm grateful that you tuned in. And I'm happy that at least one person tuned in. So, so hi. So, thank you very much, and everyone have a great evening. Bye bye.